And as ever on Thursdays, ahead of the Kent Film Club, we're joined by our resident film buff, Chris DC. We have a number of Kent-related stories. We're going to get stuck in with probably the biggest one from the week. This lady here, Mia McKenna Bruce, Maidstone, former schoolgirl, getting cast in one of the most anticipated films in the few years. And I say films because it's quite interesting what Sam Mendes is going to be doing with this project. Tell us a little, bring us up to speed.
Well, Sam Mendes, who of course we know from American Beauty, Oscar winner. Also, of course, he's directed some of the Bond films. Great variety of films, and of course doing a Beatles biopic, but as you say, but doing them as independent entries. And Mia McKenna Bruce, who, as you say, went to school in Maidstone, and there was Rising Star Award just a few years ago at the BAFTAs. Right. She was in How to Have Sex, which is set on an island, group of teenagers just before the GCSEs. Really moving anthropological study. Will be now playing one of the wives of Ringo Starr. So I mean, they're formidable. I mean, great for Kent, but what a brilliant film that this is going to be. And I like the way it's like with Priscilla, which is the film about Elvis, looking at Elvis and the myth through the lens of the wife of Priscilla. And I think that gives it a very different slant. Obviously, we don't quite know what Sam Mendes will be doing with this film, but it's very exciting that there might be a chance to have all the Beatles looked at, if you like, in isolation, but also all coming together through these 4 independent entries. And
it's fascinating, isn't it? Because there's been a lot of, especially documentaries about the Beatles, and a few years ago there was Across the Universe, which was a very psychedelic, musical, but about the Beatles story. Every sort of take on the Beatles has been them as a whole, and like you said, these are going to be 4 independent films over a period of years. You know, that's a really original take on their story.
But it's not the only original take. If you saw Yesterday, just a few years ago, with the Richard Curtis element, which was brilliant because it was also saying what would happen if the Beatles hadn't come together. It's almost like somebody else would have to have made their music. And then you have a sort of, well, John Lennon would still be alive, perhaps. So the film was then raising all these sort of questions, sort of Back to the Future type framework as well. So it's yet to see what Sam Mendes
A lot of big names signed up to the project. We know Paul Mescal's in there, Harris Dickinson, Barry Keoghan, and playing the Beatles. But Mia McKenna Bruce to be amongst those names, and she really is a rising star at the moment.
Now, when I saw her in How to Have Sex, what I thought was really powerful is that it's this idea of these teenagers going on holiday, but there's fissures between them, and it goes into quite dark territory. She's a brilliant actress, because on the one hand, it's like they're having a bit of fun, it's their GCSEs. Like After Sun, actually also with Paul Mescal, it's a film about trauma and the way in which that you're very sure watching this film that those teenagers, despite promising they'll be there forever, they're not going to be there years after. So she put in such a magnetic and quite chilling performance. I mean, she's in her mid to late 20s, but you know, she has a wonderful career ahead of her, that's for sure.
Now, a rising actor to, and a bit of a gear change as well, to some more established actors, Jennifer Lawrence and Emma Stone in the news at the moment, producing, maybe not a drama that you would expect, the Miss Piggy movie. Tell us a little bit. Yeah, what lineup that you wouldn't quite expect?
It would, because it was the 2014 Muppet movie that was filmed at the historic dockyard. Now, interesting to see these two, because I saw Bergolia just the other evening with Emma Stone. That was one of the most outrageous films I've ever watched. The director, Yorgos Lanthimos, has done some pretty quite off-kilter films before. And Emma Stone is in a film called Die My Love, which is on release tomorrow. So they're very much in the news at the moment, both Oscar winners. Jennifer Lawrence expected to win an Oscar for the film I've just mentioned, Die My Love, and then the Miss Piggy in the middle. I mean, I love that.
Up for an Oscar as well, you think?
Well, she's like Marilyn Monroe.
She would probably think that she would be, yes. And the Muppets, they're such an institution in America and around the world as well. You know, I grew up watching them. They seem to have appealed to different generations at different times. What about you? Are you a fan? And also, if you were to be one of the Muppets, which Muppet do you think you most associate with?
Well, let's just say we had a workplace quiz some years ago for the best Christmas movie ever, and it wasn't Die Hard, it was The Muppet Christmas Carol that came first. So that tells you everything. I have to say it's because Michael Caine, who plays superbly with the Muppets and treats them as fellow actors, that made that. Do you know, I mean, obviously Kermit the Frog, but Miss Piggy, I think when she was interviewed, was it on Parkinson back in the 70s, and did the same thing as Rod Hull. You know, what a brilliant, you know, interplay. And you're almost thinking this is she's more three-dimensional than most of the actresses who've sat on the sofa.
Now, you alluded to Muppets Most Wanted, 2014 film, being filmed at the historic dockyard in Chatham. Another film that, many films have been filmed there, but one that's also in the news today. The Mummy was filmed there in 1999, and it's coming back as well. Very exciting news.
Have a fourth one, and because Brendan Fraser in that original, it's such a good swashbuckling, you know, very different take on the Mummy in some ways to the, you know, what you had in the 1930s, for example. We'll see how different this is, but that film with the librarian mixed with all the supernatural foe as well. We've had it come up on Kent Film Club as well. With one of our local filmmakers, Howard from Herne Bay, chose that, and he was very much works in the film industry as well. So this is so exciting, and again, we'll put Kent on the map. If as I hope, it will be filmed here.
Now, they obviously tried to bring it back a few years ago. Image here from the Tom Cruise reboot, which wasn't received incredibly positively like the first Mummy in 1999 was.
Well, as a birthday treat to myself, back in 2017, I watched that film, and let's put it this way: it was almost like what you'd think would be a really badly made parody. I really hope that the version coming out next will learn from the mistakes.
Well, excitingly, Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, the stars of those first two films, really, and Brendan Fraser in the first three, have said that they are coming back to it. What a career both of them have had in those almost 20 years since the film came
and
out.
both Oscar winners. Brendan Fraser winning, of course, of just 2 years ago. In a very hotly contested race, because it was thought it might go to, you know, for the film Elvis, but also Rachel Weisz has won an Oscar as well, back in sort of around 2005 for The Constant Gardener. So it does feel that when you have actors of that calibre who are returning to roles that made them at least commercial successes, you just know that this is going to be a really strong performance.
I say 20 years ago. Sorry, that is a misspeak. 30 years ago. That's almost that the first Mummy
99
came out in 99.
I saw it.
Exactly.
July 1999.
And you know, like you said, hopefully these films, and obviously Kent is a great location for it. And it's just interesting to look at that variety. The Muppets film using the same location as the Mummy. So many places drawn to the historic dockyard.
And not just that, because some of the cinemas, Cineworld, are showing all the Mission Impossible films every night this week. And yes, is the answer to your next question. And of course, all I'm ever doing is looking out for the historic dockyard in Chatham, of course, so I can report back on KMTV.
Very. Doing good work for a sort of public service broadcast, civic duty, absolutely. Chris, we covered lots of ground there. I'm sure we're going to have more stories from across the county and the world of film next week. Kent Film Club coming up after this. Thank you so much for joining us.